Hey there, fellow explorers of the full spectrum. Welcome back to another episode of Full Spectrum Frontiers, the podcast where we dive deep into the wild and sometimes wacky world of national security, conflict, and the ripple effects that make waves in our everyday lives. I'm your host, Bennett Tanton, here to guide you through the maze of modern challenges with a dash of humor, a sprinkle of optimism, and, of course, a healthy respect for the curveballs life loves to throw at us. Now, before we jump into today's topic, let me ask you something. Have you ever tried to juggle? I mean, really juggle. Not just a couple of balls, but something like flaming torches or chainsaws or maybe even a few cats? No? Well, good for you. That's probably for the best. But that's exactly what it feels like when you try to balance national security, immigration, and civil liberties all at the same time. It's a high-stakes game, and the stakes couldn't be higher. You see, on one hand, we've got the need to protect our borders, keep our citizens safe, and ensure that the bad guys stay far, far away. On the other hand, we have immigration, a vital lifeline that fuels our economy, enriches our culture, and brings fresh perspectives to our national conversation. And let's not forget about civil liberties, the bedrock of our democracy, the freedoms that make life worth living. So how do we juggle all these flaming torches without getting burned? How do we protect our nation while staying true to the values that define us? And can we find a way to do it without dropping the ball, or worse, setting the whole place on fire? In today's episode, we're going to explore this intricate balancing act. We'll dive into the historical context, examine the economic and security implications of immigration, discuss the impact of modern surveillance on civil liberties, and much more. But don't worry. We're not here to doom and gloom you to death. We're going to find the silver linings, highlight the success stories, and yes, acknowledge the challenges. After all, what's a frontier without a few bumps along the way? So buckle up, folks, because we're about to embark on a journey through the full spectrum of one of the most pressing issues of our time. And who knows, by the end of this episode, you might just find yourself thinking, hey, maybe I could juggle those chainsaws after all. History, as they say, is a great teacher. And when it comes to balancing national security and civil liberties, history has given us quite a few lessons, some inspiring, some sobering, and a few that are downright cautionary tales. So, let's hop into our time machine and take a little tour through the past, where we'll see how nations have grappled with this very challenge. First stop, World War II. It's 1942, and the world is in chaos. The U.S. is fresh off the attack on Pearl Harbor, and fear is in the air. In a move that would go down in infamy, the U.S. government decides to intern over 120,000 Japanese Americans, most of them citizens, in camps, all in the name of national security. Now, this wasn't exactly the finest hour for civil liberties, was it? The fear of sabotage and espionage outweighed the principles of justice and equality, leading to one of the most criticized decisions in American history. But let's not dwell too long on the dark side, because every cloud has a silver lining, right? Fast forward to the 1970s, when the U.S. government publicly apologized and paid reparations to those who were interned. This act of atonement was a recognition that even in times of crisis, we must strive to protect the liberties that make us who we are. Now, let's skip ahead to the Cold War era, a time when the world seemed perpetually on the brink of disaster. The fear of communist infiltration was so intense that it led to the McCarthy era, a period of paranoia where civil liberties were again sacrificed on the altar of national security. Thousands of Americans were blacklisted, careers were ruined, and lives were upended, all in the name of rooting out the so-called Red Menace. It was a time when the balance tipped too far in favor of security, leaving civil liberties in the dust. But here's where it gets interesting. In the midst of all this fear, America also saw the rise of the civil rights movement. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. stood up and said, "Enough is enough." They demanded that the nation live up to its ideals of freedom and equality, even in the face of perceived threats. And you know what? They succeeded. The civil rights movement wasn't just about racial equality. It was a powerful reminder that civil liberties are non-negotiable, even when the world seems like it's falling apart. Now, if you're thinking, Bennett, this is all ancient history, what about today? Well, hold on to your hats because we're heading into more recent times. Post 9/11, the U.S. faced a new kind of threat, one that was shadowy, elusive, and capable of striking fear into the hearts of millions. The Patriot Act was passed in record time, giving the government sweeping powers to surveil, detain, and monitor in the name of security. And while these measures were intended to keep us safe, they also sparked a fierce debate about the erosion of civil liberties. Cue Edward Snowden and the NSA revelations. Suddenly, the world learned just how deep the rabbit hole of government surveillance went. While some hailed Snowden as a hero, others saw him as a traitor. But the real question was this: how far are we willing to go in the name of security? And at what point do we risk becoming the very thing we're trying to protect against? It's a tough question, isn't it? But here's the thing. History shows us that while the pendulum might swing too far one way or the other, there's always a course correction. After the excesses of the McCarthy era, there was a renewed commitment to civil rights. After the internment camps of World War II, there was a reckoning and reparations. And today, in the wake of the Snowden revelations, there's an ongoing debate about privacy, security, and the role of government in our lives. So, what's the takeaway here? It's that the balance between national security and civil liberties is not a fixed point. It's a dynamic tension, one that requires constant vigilance, thoughtful debate, and a commitment to the principles that define us. It's not always easy, and we're bound to make mistakes along the way. But if history teaches us anything, it's that we're capable of learning from those mistakes, of finding a better way forward. All right, let's switch gears and talk about something that's been at the center of many debates, protests, and dinner table conversations: immigration. Now, immigration is one of those topics that can make people feel all kinds of ways. Some folks see it as the lifeblood of our nation's growth, while others worry about the security risks and resource strain it might bring. And you know what? Both sides have valid points, which makes this one heck of a balancing act. So let's start with the good stuff: the economic impact of immigration. Imagine, if you will, a world without tacos, jazz, or tech startups founded by immigrants. Scary, right? The fact is, immigrants have played a huge role in shaping the culture, innovation, and economic strength of this country. They bring new ideas, start businesses, and fill critical roles in industries from agriculture to tech. You've probably heard the stat that a significant percentage of Fortune 500 companies were founded by immigrants or their children. That's not just a talking point. It's a testament to the vital contributions of immigrants to our economy. But let's not stop there. When it comes to the workforce, immigrants often fill gaps that native-born workers either can't or won't. Think about it. Who's out there picking the crops, building the homes, or staffing the hospitals? Immigrants, that's who. They're not just taking jobs. They're doing the jobs that keep our economy humming, often under tough conditions and for lower wages than many of us would accept. And here's the kicker. More immigrants mean more consumers, which means more demand for goods and services. This drives economic growth, which benefits everyone. It's like a virtuous cycle. Immigrants contribute to the economy grows, and that growth creates more opportunities for everyone. It's not just a win-win, it's a win-win-win. But, and here's where things get a bit tricky. Immigration isn't just about economics, it's also about security. And this is where the conversation often takes a turn. You see, as much as we benefit from immigration, there are legitimate concerns about who's coming in and why. In a world where threats can come from anywhere, how do we ensure that we're welcoming those who want to contribute to our society while keeping out those who might want to do us harm? Cue the debate on border security. We've all heard the arguments. Some say we need tighter borders, stronger vetting processes, and more resources for immigration enforcement. Others argue that a fortress mentality doesn't reflect our values as a nation of immigrants. And then there's the question of what happens when security concerns lead to policies that seem to target certain groups unfairly or result in human rights abuses. It's a delicate balance, no doubt about it. Let's take a look at some real-world examples. Think about the refugee crisis. Millions of people fleeing war, persecution, and natural disasters, seeking safety and a better life. On one hand, we have a moral obligation to help those in need. On the other hand, there's the concern that among those seeking refuge could be individuals with harmful intentions. The challenge is figuring out how to provide sanctuary without compromising security. Then there's the issue of illegal immigration. Now, this is a hot-button topic if there ever was one. Some argue that illegal immigrants drain public resources, depress wages, and increase crime. Others point out that these individuals are often fleeing desperate situations and that they contribute significantly to the economy, despite their undocumented status. And let's be real, building a wall or ramping up deportations might sound like solutions, but they don't address the root causes of illegal immigration. So, what's the answer? Well, like most things, it's not black and white. It's about finding that sweet spot where we can secure our borders, vet newcomers effectively, and still honor our heritage as a nation of immigrants. That might mean smarter, more targeted immigration policies that focus on both security and economic needs. It might mean investing in the root causes of migration, things like foreign aid, trade policies, and international cooperation, so people don't feel compelled to leave their homes in the first place. And it definitely means having a nuanced, fact-based conversation that moves beyond the sound bites and the shouting matches. Because here's the thing, immigration isn't going away. It's a fundamental part of who we are, and it's going to continue to shape our future. The question is, how do we manage it in a way that's fair, humane, and secure? So, if there's a takeaway from this segment, it's that immigration is both a tremendous opportunity and a complex challenge. It's not just about opening or closing doors. It's about finding a balance that allows us to thrive as a nation while staying true to our values of inclusion and security. All right, folks, we've talked about the historical context and the economic impacts of immigration, but now we're diving into a topic that's as controversial as it is crucial: civil liberties in the age of surveillance and border control. I know, just hearing the word surveillance might make you want to check your phone for bugs or glance out the window for a drone. But before we all start wearing tinfoil hats, let's break down what's really going on here. Let's start with the basics. In the aftermath of 9/11, the world changed in ways that are still playing out today. Governments around the globe ramped up surveillance efforts, all in the name of keeping us safe from terrorism. And look, there's no denying that some of these measures were necessary. After all, the threats we face aren't just abstract. They're real, they're dangerous, and they're constantly evolving. But here's where things get a little dicey. In our quest for security, we've entered an era where Big Brother isn't just watching. He's practically sitting on the couch next to us, eating our popcorn and flipping through our Netflix history. Whether it's the government tracking our online activity, monitoring our phone calls, or using facial recognition technology at the airport, the line between security and privacy has never been blurrier. And that brings us to the heart of the issue. How do we protect ourselves from those who would do us harm without sacrificing the very freedoms that make life worth living? It's the classic security versus liberty debate, and it's one that's been playing out in courtrooms, legislative chambers, and dinner tables ever since the first Patriot Act was signed into law. Let's talk about some of the tools in the modern surveillance toolkit. There's the good old-fashioned wiretap, which has been around for decades, but has evolved into something far more sophisticated with the advent of digital technology. Then there's metadata collection, the practice of gathering information about our communications, like who we're talking to, when, and for how long. And let's not forget about the more controversial methods, like mass data mining and bulk collection of online activity. Now, these tools have undeniably helped thwart potential attacks and track down bad actors. But at what cost? The reality is, when you cast a net that wide, you're not just catching the bad guys, you're scooping up a whole lot of innocent fish, too. And this is where civil liberties come into play. You see, civil liberties are the rights and freedoms that protect us from government overreach. They're the reason you can speak your mind, practice your religion, and yes, even criticize your government without fear of reprisal. But when surveillance programs become too broad, too secretive, or too unaccountable, they can start to erode these very freedoms. Take, for example, the infamous Edward Snowden revelations. When Snowden blew the whistle on the NSA's mass surveillance programs, it was like pulling back the curtain on a world most of us didn't even know existed. Suddenly, we were confronted with the fact that our emails, phone calls, and even our Google searches were being monitored on a scale that most of us found unsettling, to say the least. But here's the kicker. While many people were outraged by these revelations, others shrugged it off, saying, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, you've got nothing to worry about. And to an extent, I get that sentiment, but the problem is when we start to normalize this kind of surveillance, We risk creating a society where privacy is a privilege, not a right. And that's a slippery slope, my friends. Let's not forget about border control either. As governments tighten their grip on who comes in and out of their countries, they're using more and more surveillance tools to do so. From biometric scans at the airport to drones patrolling the borders, the tools of the trade are getting more advanced and more invasive by the day. And while these measures might make us feel safer, they also raise some important questions. For instance, how much data should the government collect on travelers? How long should that data be stored? And who should have access to it? These are questions that don't have easy answers, but they're crucial to the ongoing debate about the balance between security and civil liberties. So, where does that leave us? Well, here's the thing. Surveillance, when done right, is a powerful tool for keeping us safe. But when it goes unchecked, it can become a tool for oppression. That's why it's so important to have strong oversight, clear laws, and a vigilant public that's willing to ask the tough questions. And let's not forget the role of technology companies in all this. After all, they're the ones building the tools that make this surveillance possible. Should they be doing more to protect our privacy? Should they resist government demands for data? These are the kinds of questions that tech CEOs are grappling with every day, and the answers will have a huge impact on the future of civil liberties. So what's the takeaway here? It's that we need to find a balance between the need for security and the need for freedom. It's not an easy balance to strike, and there will be times when we get it wrong. But if we stay informed, stay engaged, and stay vigilant, we can find a way to keep our nation safe without sacrificing the liberties that make it worth protecting. Inclusivity. Now there's a word that's been making the rounds a lot lately. You see it in corporate mission statements, hear it in political speeches, and read it in social media hashtags. But when it comes to national security, inclusivity isn't just a buzzword, it's a strategy. A strategy that, when done right, can make our nation stronger, safer, and more resilient. So let's dive into what inclusivity means in the context of national security and why it's more important now than ever. First, let's clear something up. When we talk about inclusivity in national security, we're not just talking about making sure everyone feels warm and fuzzy inside. We're talking about a deliberate effort to include diverse perspectives, experiences, and talents in the decision-making process. Why? Because in a world that's increasingly complex and interconnected, having a variety of viewpoints isn't just nice to have, it's essential. Let's take a step back and think about what national security really means. At its core, it's about protecting our nation from threats, both foreign and domestic. But here's the thing. Threats don't look like they used to. They're not always coming from the other side of a battlefield or across an ocean. Sometimes they come from within. Sometimes they're not even physical. They're ideological, cyber-based, or economic. And to tackle these diverse threats, we need a security apparatus that's just as diverse. Imagine a national security team that's composed entirely of people who think, act, and see the world in exactly the same way. Sure, they might come up with solutions, but those solutions will likely be limited, maybe even flawed, because they're not seeing the full picture. Now, imagine a team that includes people from different backgrounds, with different life experiences and perspectives. They're more likely to spot the blind spots, anticipate the unexpected, and come up with innovative solutions that a homogeneous group might miss. That's the power of inclusivity. But inclusivity isn't just about who's sitting around the decision-making table. It's about the policies we create and how we implement them. For example, let's talk about community engagement. In many cases, the communities that are most affected by national security policies, whether it's counterterrorism measures, immigration enforcement, or disaster response, are often the least represented in the planning process. And that's a problem, because when people feel excluded, mistrust grows, and mistrust can quickly turn into resistance. Now let's get real for a second. Inclusivity in national security isn't always easy. There are challenges, to be sure. There's the risk of groupthink, where the desire for consensus stifles critical debate. There's the potential for tokenism, where diversity is more about appearances than substance. And there's the simple fact that bringing together people with different perspectives can lead to conflict, and not the constructive kind. But here's the thing, despite these challenges, the benefits far outweigh the risks. When communities feel included in the national security process, they're more likely to trust the system, cooperate with authorities, and contribute to the overall safety of the nation. Think about it. How much more effective would counterterrorism efforts be if law enforcement agencies worked hand in hand with the communities most at risk of radicalization? How much more resilient would our disaster response be if it incorporated the local knowledge and resources of the people who live in those areas? And then there's the issue of recruitment. The national security field, whether it's the military, intelligence agencies, or law enforcement, needs to reflect the diversity of the nation it serves. That means actively recruiting and retaining individuals from different racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic backgrounds, as well as those with different skills and experiences. Not only does this make the security apparatus more representative, but it also brings in a wealth of talent that might otherwise be overlooked. But inclusivity isn't just a one-way street. It's not just about what diverse individuals can bring to the table. It's also about what the security apparatus can bring to them. That means creating an environment where everyone feels valued, respected, and heard. It means providing opportunities for growth and advancement, and it means being willing to listen to and act on criticism and feedback. Now, let's talk about the big picture. Inclusivity in national security isn't just about making us safer in the short term. It's about building a stronger, more resilient society in the long term. When we create policies that are inclusive, we're not just addressing the immediate threats, we're also addressing the underlying issues that can lead to conflict in the first place. We're building bridges between communities, fostering trust, and creating a society where everyone has a stake in the nation's security. So, what's the takeaway here? It's that inclusivity isn't just a nice to have, it's a must have. It's a strategy that makes us stronger, smarter, and safer. It's about ensuring that everyone, regardless of who they are or where they come from, has a voice in the decisions that affect their lives. And in a world where the threats are constantly evolving, that's the kind of strategy we need. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the historical context of balancing security and civil liberties to the role of inclusivity in national security. But now it's time to talk solutions. Specifically, how do we craft policies that effectively balance security, immigration, and civil liberties? And perhaps the most challenging part, how do we do it in a way that brings people together, rather than driving them further apart? The answer, my friends, lies in the elusive art of bipartisanship. I know what you're thinking. Bipartisanship? In today's political climate? Good luck with that. And yeah, I get it. These days, it seems like the divide between political parties is wider than ever. But here's the thing. When it comes to national security, immigration, and civil liberties, the stakes are too high for us to stay stuck in our ideological corners. We need solutions that work for everyone, and that means finding common ground. So, let's start by asking the question, what do we all agree on? No matter where you fall on the political spectrum, most people would agree that we want to live in a country that's safe, where people are treated fairly, and where opportunities are available to all. We want policies that protect us from harm, that respect our rights, and that allow us to thrive. That's the foundation we can build on. But here's where things get tricky. While we might agree on the goals, we often disagree on the means to achieve them. Some people prioritize security above all else, while others are more concerned about protecting civil liberties. Some see immigration as a threat, while others view it as an opportunity. The challenge is finding a way to meet these competing needs without sacrificing one for the other. This is where bipartisanship comes into play. Bipartisanship isn't about compromising your principles or watering down your ideas until they're meaningless. It's about finding solutions that everyone can live with. Solutions that respect different perspectives and address the concerns of all sides. Let's take immigration reform as an example. For years, we've seen a lot of proposals, but very little action. Why? Because too often, the debate gets bogged down in partisan bickering, with each side more focused on scoring political points than actually solving the problem. But what if, instead of demonizing each other, we looked for areas of agreement? One potential area of bipartisan agreement is border security. Most people agree that we need secure borders. It's how we go about securing them that's the issue. Instead of arguing about whether to build walls or tear them down, why not focus on modernizing our border security with technology, increasing funding for border personnel, and improving the infrastructure at our ports of entry? These are solutions that could gain support from both sides of the aisle. Another area ripe for bipartisan solutions is the visa system. Our current system is outdated and often fails to meet the needs of both employers and workers. By reforming the visa process, we can create a more flexible system that allows us to attract the talent we need while ensuring that those who come to this country are doing so legally. Again, this is a solution that has the potential to gain broad support. And then there's the issue of civil liberties in the age of surveillance. This is an area where we've seen some surprising alliances, with libertarians and civil rights advocates often finding common ground in their opposition to government overreach. By working together, they've been able to push for reforms that protect privacy without compromising security. It's a great example of how bipartisanship can lead to meaningful change. But here's the key to making bipartisanship work. Both sides have to be willing to listen, to compromise, and to put the common good above party loyalty. It's not about winning or losing. It's about finding solutions that work. And yes, that means that sometimes you're going to have to give a little to get a little. But that's the nature of democracy. It's messy, it's frustrating, and it's far from perfect. But when it works, it's the best system we've got. Now, I'm not saying the bipartisanship is easy. It takes courage, it takes patience, and it takes a willingness to engage with people who might see the world very differently than you do. But here's the thing. When it comes to national security, immigration, and civil liberties, the stakes are too high to let partisan politics get in the way. We need solutions that are thoughtful, balanced, and yes, bipartisan. So, what's the takeaway here? It's that bipartisanship isn't just a lofty ideal, it's a practical necessity. It's the only way we're going to navigate the complex challenges of our time. Whether it's securing our borders, reforming our immigration system, or protecting our civil liberties, we need to work together. Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together. And there you have it, folks. Another journey through the full spectrum of national security, immigration, and civil liberties. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the lessons of history to the importance of inclusivity and the power of bipartisan solutions. It's a complex web we're trying to untangle, but if there's one thing I hope you take away from this episode, it's that balance is possible. With thoughtful discussion, mutual respect, and a willingness to find common ground, we can craft policies that keep us safe, uphold our values, and move our nation forward. Now, before we wrap up, I've got a small favor to ask. If you enjoyed today's episode, if it made you think, or even if it sparked a little debate in your mind, I'd love for you to share it with a friend or two. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to Full Spectrum Frontiers so you never miss an episode. Your support helps us continue to explore these important topics and bring you the content that matters. And hey, if you've got a moment, why not leave a review? Let me know what you think, what you'd like to hear more about, or even what we can do better. Your feedback is what keeps this podcast growing and evolving, just like the world of national security that we're all trying to understand. So, until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep pushing the frontiers of what you know. I'm Bennett Tanton, and this has been Full Spectrum Frontiers. Stay safe, stay informed, and I'll catch you on the next episode.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just you, me, and the odds. We stuck together, we two peas in a pod. You dealt a bad hand, I'm there seizing the cards. We'll never be separated till we see in the gods. We've been low together, high forever. Long as we go together, we'll die whenever. Be a light, couldn't let the darkness try you ever. Truth in my word, you I lie to never. And when the world gets a little too hard, wipe your eyes, put away your sorrow. When it's war, I'll be leading the charge, and I'll be still fighting for you tomorrow. Yeah, even with a blindfold or in different time zones, could find my way to you with my eyes closed. There's nothing between us. Go to Mars and Venus, stand in front of every one of them rocks they slinging and be a shield. Yeah.
In the fiercest battle, I'll defend you from all these arrows in the sword I will keep you from danger. Let me be your shield.
Yeah, let's go. Let me be your shield. Let me be your shield. Let me be your shield.
saying it may take patience, but you're gonna make it out. I scratch my own 2 feet to pull